So I will give you some tips, and then I'll also share my mistake by the end of this video. And I'm now working on fixing it. So tip number 1 is when you are designing the raw plant-based diet, take your mindset from the box called macros and place it in the box called micronutrients. So when you place your head in the box named micronutrients, you will open the tables of all essential vitamins and minerals, which minerals you can only get from the environment around you. We don't have a nuclear fusion chamber anywhere in our body. So you build those tables of essential minerals and vitamins, and you populate them with the foods from the raw plant kingdom. Of course, you can include mushrooms as well. Mushrooms belong to their separate kingdom. And you can also, of course, regard seaweed. Seaweed will be the major functional food I mentioned in all my videos. I swear by 2 things, seaweeds and hemp. So you do this. You populate micronutrients with those raw plant foods, not forgetting about sprouts, of course, and not forgetting about functional seeds. And then you will be surprised. When you hit RDV, recommended daily values, of those minerals and vitamins, or exceed them, you will notice, because certain foods will have overshoot of the elements, you will notice that your macros is automatically met at some normal standard value. So on raw foods, it's really easy to hit proper macros, proper caloric intake, as long as you fulfill all your micronutrient needs with variety of foods. Now tip number 2, however, is to focus on your microbiome diversity. And you know that microbes that live in our gut, they're capable of synthesizing essential amino acids, they're capable of synthesizing vitamins, so anything but minerals. Again, minerals is something that we need to get from nature. And so for this microbiotic needs, you need to diversify the sources where you get your fiber from. So you need to introduce some foods that carry resistant starches, which can be root vegetables such as sweet potatoes, carrots, celery roots, turnips, radishes, all sorts of foods like that, beets. You can introduce them raw in some small quantity because they're kind of on the heavier side when it comes to digestion. But importantly as well, you need to diversify the greens and fruits that you're consuming. So if you, for example, go to the store, don't buy 5 bundles of kale. Buy a bundle of kale, bundle of parsley, dandelion, a bundle of colored greens, a bundle of whatever. Even if they have leaves of carrots, eat those, put them in the salad. Leaves of beans, chards, whatever they sell, like all sorts of like broccoli, cabbages, celery, bok choy. Buy 1 piece of each and add them, mix and match them every day. And this will help you to build microbiome that is more diverse. Then tip number 3, utilize symbiotic cultures, of course. You can, of course, opt for pill form of probiotics early on, but then it would be really cool if you are able to find living yogurt or make it yourself. If you can buy sauerkraut that is not pasteurized, no lid that pops. The lid usually is like swelling, and they have usually put tape over it such it doesn't pop. So there are such varieties of fermented foods that you can introduce to actually restore your microbiome early on raw vegan diet. So you just buy sauerkraut, kimchi, fermented beets, fermented seaweeds even. You can use miso paste. Miso paste is not raw, but it's a living food, so why not once in a while indulge in this thing? It's very fragrant as well. It goes with sauces. You can make different fascinating soups that will be mostly raw. So you can utilize those living foods. And also on the symbiotic note, actually, when you opt for raw foods, a lot of them carry bacteria that help you break down those foods efficiently. So, for example, the example with seaweed, because I heard in the comments some concerns about consuming seaweed. In fact, there is a stereotype that you need to be born Japanese in order to be able to break down the seaweed. It's not true because raw seaweed contains bacteria that when you break down the seaweed, when you subject it to their digestive enzymes, those bacteria help you finish breaking down the fibers that usually would remain undigested if you, let's say, subject the seaweed to severe sterilization. And other examples of symbiotic relations that you can use in your diet will be, of course, bacteria and microalgae, which produces B12. So you can use microalgae as well as like NORI sheets I mentioned in my video on my nutritional profile of my diet. So use symbiotic relationships that you may build, symbiotic bacteria and microorganisms for your advantage. Now, especially it will be good and important if you are building your raw plant-based body after, let's say, following some super unhealthy diet. So standard American diet, processed food diet will be a really great example of that. So absolutely up for this. Then tip number 4 will be to actually focus on consuming enough omega-3. This is something that had been overlooking for some time in the past. But it's a really important thing because, for example, in my case, I wasn't able to fully resolve like such things as PMS or painful periods sometimes on raw diet, and I started learning about it. Such thing as prostaglandins are formed from omega-6, so consuming surplus of omega-6 without consuming sufficient amount of omega-3 is a fatality that you can cause in your body, and this will lead to certain delayed symptoms and problems later on as well. So if you want to keep your body if you want to fully utilize the benefits of raw diet, focusing on consuming enough omega-3 is very important. But you don't need to just focus every time you eat something. No, you just need to introduce flax seeds and minimize, reduce consumption of certain nuts and seeds other than hemp, flax, and walnuts. Maximize flax, hemp, and walnuts. And this will do good to you. So use them as main sources of fats and use other nuts and seeds as supplementary sources because they all carry minerals that maybe almost unique to them. So it is pointless to get rid of them completely. I, for example, really love sesame seeds, especially that's one of the seeds that contain lots of calcium. So it's also so fragrant and goes so well with certain dishes and desserts. I love them. And then another source of omega-3 is, of course, seaweed. So eating a lot of seaweed on a daily basis will do only good to you. Then I want to share my biggest mistake that I've done while on raw plant-based diet. And this is overeating. So while on raw plant-based diet, you pretty much can eat as much as you want as long as it's, again, whole form foods. It's not like squeezed juices, squeezed oils. So you eat whole foods. If you overeat, you likely won't gain notorious amounts of weight unless, again, you eat just a bag of nuts per day and polish them up with dates. As long as you eat balanced diet, returning to point 1, micronutrient-based diet, you will likely not gain weight on this diet, even if you do some surplus of calories. So raw diet is where caloric theory kind of breaks for the most part. But when you eat so much fiber, you end up being bloated. So I have some transitioning moments. So if I take my big salad and eat whole salad, I will get problems. If I cut it in half, I have 0 problems. So why I started overeating to begin with. When I was transitioning from eating concentrates and I was on very good Mediterranean diet without dairy but with some occasional meat and with seafood. This was my thing. Whole food, organic Mediterranean diet. Perfection. I transitioned from concentrated foods, down to raw foods. By concentrate, I'm saying because I ate concentrated proteins and concentrated sugars, because when we cook, starches turn into sugar, certain fraction of fiber turns into sugars, so it kind of increases the energy output of food in the body. But at the same time, it starts acting spiky in the body. So that's why I'm calling them concentrate. When I transitioned from that to eating raw food, suddenly, psychologically, I had the thought that now I'm eating less concentrated food. So probably I need to eat much more than I used to. So I started eating so much that, and I was training myself to do this on purpose because, again, I had this phobia until recently, until I did the calculations. After I saw how much micronutrients I receive with my diet, and especially with functional foods such as seaweeds and with wild foods, wild greens, I realized that there is no point in overeating, because overeating, especially that leads to bloating, it does the following. First of all, constant bloating causes intestinal walls to stretch. It reduces absorption of nutrients. It can cause some vascular problems in proximity of the gut. So there are some crazy things that can happen in people who constantly have this extra pressure in the gut. It's really harmful in the long term. So I decided to dial back on the volume of food that I'm eating. And another thing that may be concerning is that when we exceed certain amount of food, we stop absorbing it. So again, we eat a lot of functional foods, we clean our body, and we increase the consumption of functional foods, so our nutrient intake increases. But then when we start increasing the amount of food, the absorption drastically drops. And so body just doesn't utilize all this volume while bearing this load of excessive food that it doesn't need or cannot utilize. So I decided that overeating was this major problem that was causing me some residual discomfort. Of course, after a big salad, even 20 minutes, I still can go and run. I still can go do workout after the salad. It digests extremely fast. But still, I just don't feel that it's right. And another thing that I noticed is that in the first 2 years of raw veganism, I was completely irresponsive to any notion of fasting, to any notion of limiting the food intake. But in several months ago, it just started coming to me naturally that I would want to have a lighter diet. Even light. I mean, it seems like, from a person who thinks that raw veganism is celery and carrots, of course, it seems like some bullshit. But raw diet can be heavy. I mean, we eat nuts and seeds. And then some starchy things too. So, and lots of greens. So there's a lot of fat. There's a lot of sugar. There is a lot of hearty things. So it still can be heavier than desired. And my body is now calling for a little bit more lightness, and plus also the season helps. Actually, currently there's lots of religious people. They have Lent, so it's natural. And in Ayurveda also, in the adjunct between the season and transitional seasons, they also have cleansing seasons, where panchakarma procedures were being carried out, for example. So, all those things, they just come in line, and I just feel this calling to not overeat. And I would like you to listen to your body and keep your nutrition sufficient but not excessive, because this is for sure a very bad thing if you tend to overeat on raw diet. Of course, at first it will be fine. But just bear in mind that over time, if you eat some enormous amounts of food, even the best foods you can possibly imagine, it will bounce back. It will not be sustainable on the long run. And it may cause anything from actual some physical changes in your body to nutritional deficiencies, even despite the fact that you made the most nutritional foods on the earth. So that's where I will conclude my video. These are the recommendations. Absolutely watch my nutritional breakdown of the video that I will put in the description. And please leave your comments below, share your experiences, ask your questions, suggest new topics, hit like, subscribe to my video if you like, subscribe to my channel if you like my video. And yeah, suggest new topics. It will be really cool if we live in dialogue.